Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Autism in Action podcast. This is Tasha Rollins, your host, and today we have got an amazing guest. We have got Mr. Michael Tichy with the Greenville Can organization in Greenville, South Carolina. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
If you would just take a moment and share all about what you guys offer in our community and what it is that you do.
Okay, well, so I'm the director of the Barberstone Foundation, and Greenville Can is an initiative that was started by the Barberstone Foundation back in 2013. And so what we do with Greenville Can, we don't provide any direct services to people with disabilities. What we do is we are a coalition of organizations that came together to form Greenville Can. And our focus is on making our community a better place to live for people with disabilities. And when we came together, we identified different areas that that we felt like were opportunity areas that we could work on in our community. So we have a big, strong push on employment for individuals with disabilities, ADA access. You know, even though ADA was passed almost 30 years ago, we still have issues with physical and program access to different things going on. So we're very involved in that. Also, we're involved a lot in recreation and trying to create more opportunities for people to recreate. And then we have a huge push on civic engagement for people with disabilities. And our thought on that is until we have people with disabilities represented at boards and at councils and, and all the places where people sit down and make decisions about our community, we're never really going to have an equitable community.
Well, that is just amazing. And I know that takes a lot of manpower and a lot of effort.
Yeah, it's fun though. And I always joke about kumbaya. The thing I love most about Greenville Can is, when you think about all the organizations that exist in our community, they all are really focused on serving, providing some sort of service to different folks. And they're very focused on that, and it takes a lot of energy and effort. But when you start looking at things such as equitable opportunities, that doesn't really fall within any one organization's mission or at least scope of services. But when we work together, we can make those sort of big picture system type changes that ultimately benefit, everybody with a disability.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with you guys being a coalition of self-advocates and service providers, you guys have the mission to make Greenville a better place for individuals with disabilities. What are some of the ways that you guys do that?
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples of some things we've worked on. I used to work for Parks and Rec for Greenville County, and that's kind of how I got involved in this because, Greenville County Rec does Camp Spearhead and Special Olympics and things such as that. Mm-hmm. But just within the recreation arena, we worked with, did a lot of work with Greenville County Parks and Rec and the city of Greenville, as well as Greer Parks and Recreation, and some of the other agencies around, looking at what their legal obligations are around ADA. So a lot of folks don't realize that, a lot of people think ADA is just for people with physical limitations, but ultimately it's for anybody with a disability. And so I know when I worked at Parks and Rec, I'd get calls all the time by people that had kids with autism saying, hey, do you have any programs that summer day camps that my kid could attend that aren't an overnight camp like Camp Spearhead? Well, technically, every program that's offered through the YMCA's and through public parks and rec and all of that, they have a legal obligation to accommodate individuals with disabilities. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of the providers don't even know that. And so, but our belief in that is how can we work with them? So one, they know what their obligation is, but more importantly, how can they realize that, look at being inclusive as opposed to just accommodating? You don't want your child with autism to go into a summer day camp and just sit in the corner. You want the staff to be aware of disability etiquette and how to do games and things so that it's inclusive for all folks, whether they have disability or not. So our focus is we're the friendly voice of disabilities, and we really work with folks to try to get them to do the right thing for the right reasons and then try to provide support in them doing that. But now Greenville County Rec, they've done an assessment of all of their parks and facilities and programs, and now they have an inclusion coordinator. So if anyone has a child with a disability or a disability themselves wants to participate in any program at Greenville County Rec, they can call the office and say, my child has a disability or I have a disability, and they can be connected with the inclusion coordinator that will basically serve as a liaison between them and whatever program it is that they're trying to do to make sure that they get their needs met.
That is so incredible.
So yes, that's one example. Sorry, I'm a talker, so I can go on and on and on.
You are doing just
give
great.
me a high sign if you need me to take a breath. But so that's like when we talk about equitable opportunities, that's a good example of that. On the employment front, we have been working with, there's a lot of different disability employment providers in Greenville: Vocational Rehabilitation, Thrive Upstate, Goodwill, Arc of the Midlands, things like that. Part of the challenge that's existed before in the past is none of these agencies work well together. Well, really, they just don't work together, period. And then we had employers, or a lot of those agencies, when we said, how do we increase disability employment opportunities? They said, well, the problem's the employers. So, they just don't have enough opportunities. And so long story short, we were able to get a grant and hire an expert in workforce development that works directly with employers to help them overcome barriers on their end, and then is facilitating a group that is made up of every disability employment service provider that serves Greenville County, sits in the same room. They meet quarterly. They work together to meet the needs of the different employers. And so since that time, it's really created a lot of job opportunities for people with disabilities because of collaboration and working together and overcoming barriers and such. And then I've got one more little example I'd love to tell you about that we're super excited about. We just started doing. I had a funder ask me one time, they said, if you could do one thing in the world to make our community a better place for people with disabilities, what would it be? And I said, I would engage in a campaign. Basically, I said that the main challenge that people with disabilities face towards opportunity is not their disability. It's the barriers that are created by people without disabilities based off of false assumptions and outdated stereotypes of what a person can and cannot do, or wants or does not want. And if we can address that so that people in the community see people with disabilities as a person first, as opposed to a disabled person or whatever, and puts on top of them all these different assumptions and whatnot about what folks can do or not. If we can change that, then that would make things significantly, better. And so, being a person without a disability, and I don't have disabilities in my family, I'm kind of keenly aware of sort of the other side of the ballgame on this. And so we've engaged in a process of how can we create opportunities for people to see people with disabilities in a different light. So we sponsor through the Barbara Stone Foundation a participant every year with a disability that would need an accommodation to go through Greenville Chamber of Commerce's Leadership Greenville program. We've just started doing that with the Furman University's Diversity Leadership program. And then in October, we did the first ever Can Talk event. And so if you're familiar with the TED Talk, they're all over the internet. Can Talks are like TED Talks, but with a twist. The people who are speaking are individuals with disabilities. And we had a great event. We sold out center stage, and we're getting ready to
absolutely amazing as an attendee. We were there. So
good. Yeah, you saw it then. So you'll get excited about this. Hopefully, we're getting ready to launch a Can Talk YouTube channel. So all the different Can Talk that were at the event, and then we're going to do some smaller Can Talk kind of salon type events. But we're also going to start something kind of like this. We're calling it Can Conversations. And so we will interview different individuals with disabilities every month and put it on the Can Talk channel. And the whole thing will be people with our interviewer will be a person with a disability, and we're going to start by interviewing the folks who did our Can Talks at the event. Our first one's coming up, will be released in January, and it's going to be Jason Herdich, who was the sign language interpreter that was Nikki Haley's rock star interpreter during the hurricane or whatever. So just a lot of kind of random stuff. A lot of it sort of at the 10,000 foot level, but and I've got one other little thing. I'm going to throw that out there too. We started something called GVL Ability, and it's the best way to describe it is sort of an affinity group within Greenville Can, and it was started as a way to increase civic engagement and community engagement for people with disabilities. And so anybody with a disability can be part of GVL Ability. It doesn't cost anything. It's just a group. But what they are doing is, one, we're trying to get people placed on board. So one of our board members came through GVL Ability for Barbara Stone Foundation, but they're also going to engage in volunteer projects. And so what better way, so often when people think of people with disabilities, they think of them on the receiving end of charity or service. And so this group says, we want to get out there and